Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Leanne. I can't tell you how excited I am to have this conversation with you because something happens when you and I talk.
Yes. So, for my listeners or my viewers who are watching on YouTube, hey, YouTube, me and Heather, we connected last year. She had an amazing online summit that she asked me to be a part of. 2 weeks in October, having over 25 amazing speakers from all over the world coming on to share their story of going from surviving to thriving. And when I saw the title, I was like, oh, that's my vibe. If you've been here for a while, you know this is a Watch Us Thrive podcast. And just the conversation that me and you had, that I was able to share a little bit of my story. I appreciate you so much for allowing me to come on and feel safe and seen, heard, and understood in order to let other people know, despite the shit that I went through, look at me now. And now I'm returning the favor. And I'm so glad to have you come onto my platform so people can learn more about you and your story. So let's start off with an introduction, who you are, what you do, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently today, I work as a certified neurocoach, which is basically let's fix the stuff in the brain that we don't want to keep getting in our way anymore. Let's work on removing it at the root so that it doesn't continue to stop us. And going back, the reason I got involved in all of this was as a kid, I was molested repeatedly from age 8 to 12. And I withdrew into myself. And it was just like, if it's happening to me, I don't want it to happen to anybody else. And I just withdrew, like many of us do. And we pull back. And I wouldn't tell a soul. Nobody knew what was going on with me. They just knew something shifted and I was different. And after it had stopped, I was that angry teenager. I was that angry teenager that lashed out at anything. Like someone was kind to me, I'm going to lash out at you because don't you dare be kind to me. That went on throughout all of my teenage years. And then finally something happened like in my early 20s. And I was like, everything, just the memories and everything flooded back unbelievably. And I was like, what is going on? And that's when I finally spoke to my family and said, am I losing my mind? What's going on here? Because I felt like I was losing my mind because I had been so angry for years. And I was like, what is all of this? And it just came back in such detail repeatedly over and over and over. And they're like, yeah, we always wondered. So that's really when I began on this journey to say, okay, I will not allow it to stop me. There is no way he's going to win. He already took enough from me. I was about 23. He had already taken 15 of my 23 years from me. I was not going to let him take the rest of my life.
Now, when you dealt with that in childhood, was it someone that you knew? Was it a family member or someone close to you? Yeah.
Yeah, it was someone that was close and people didn't expect. And especially like it was interesting years later because I met some of the boys on the block and stuff that we were friends with, the whole family was friends with and stuff. And they always thought we had the perfect life. And I was like, if you only knew, because everybody knew about their stuff, but ours was hidden, which made it
That's
harder.
something that it happens so much in society, right? Like, especially growing up in communities of color, like I'm of Puerto Rican descent, and we are taught from the older generation, what happens at home stays at home, and you don't put our business out into the world. And if you are at a family party and that weird looking uncle or that drunk aunt over there who's always causing a scene, like you don't say shit to no one from the outside coming in because there's the shame, there's the embarrassment, there's the what are people going to say and think? And so we're so conditioned from childhood, in so many societies to not speak up and not talk about the things that we've gone through. And that manifests into teenagehood, adulthood. And I just respect you so much for finally getting to the point to speak out and speak your truth and give other people hope to be like, I went through this shit in childhood. I was abused as a kid. There's so many people who have gone through that and haven't gotten to the point that you are now being able to talk about it. So I just want to give you your flowers before we even continue with the conversation because it's not easy. It's difficult to talk about this kind of things.
Yeah, because you never know what the reaction is going to be. You never know if someone's going to say, well, what did you do? Or you caused that? What did you say? Or you don't know if they're going to say, well, just sweep it under the rug, just get on with your life. None of that is right. The best thing anybody can ever do when someone shares this, especially early on when they're just starting to say, how do I even deal with this? Is I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Whether you want to just let it out. When I work with my clients, I'm like, just let it all out. There is zero judgment here because I know that if you can let it out on me, that's only going to benefit you because you're getting it out. The more we suppress it, the more we suppress it, the more it stays in our subconscious mind and continues to dictate everything going forward from that moment. So our subconscious mind remembers every single experience we've had. Consciously, we don't. It's there, every single thing. And if we shift just a tiny little pivot, we start to look at it from a different lens. And that's when the healing starts.
So what was it for you? I know you mentioned it a little bit, but was there like a pivotal moment that made the shift for you later on in life to be like, holy shit, I went through this. Now all of these memories are coming back? Or take us on that journey of what that looked like prior to you starting the healing and then get into what did you actually do to start healing from your shit?
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't a trigger. It wasn't something happened. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's time. You know, I had been on a road of self destruction. Like I mentioned, throughout my teenage years, I was just angry. I pushed everybody away. I'm surprised I had any friends at all, to be honest with you, because I was just like, don't come near me. Like I was the tough kid. I was the one, like, you come near me, I will fight. And then when I was about 18, that's when it was like, oh, okay, you have freedom and everything, school's over and stuff. And I was hanging around with the wrong crowd and I came across drugs and I came across whiskey and they don't get along with me. I would black out, flat out black out, and they'd be like, "I can't believe it." I was like, "What are you talking about?" So then it was about 23 or so when all of this stuff just came up. And when I was 18, going through the drugs and the dousing around with alcohol, and, is there something I like? Because it was disgusting to me. The taste was horrible, but I still tried it because I was trying to escape. And I just felt so horrible that I was ready to end my life. And I found myself at 18 driving down the road, a 20-mile-an-hour road, heading toward a cliff, doing like 60, 70 miles an hour in the dark. Something said stop. I don't know what it was, it just said stop. Right at the end of that road, I hit the brakes and I didn't continue to go across where I would have gone off a 200-foot cliff. That's where I was at because I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I didn't want to continue living the way I was living. So I had that moment, and then it was like, a couple years later and all. And then it all just like, something happened where my subconscious said, you're ready. The subconscious reveals when we're ready, when it says, you're strong enough, it's time. And then, like I mentioned, all this stuff came up, and I spoke to my family and all, and they're like, yeah, we always wondered. So what did I do? I tried therapy one-on-one. I tried group. I went to these survivor meetings and I just continued trying. I was reading every single book I could get my hands on. I was doing everything that I could discover. And for me, none of it felt right because what it was to me was they placed this label upon me, you're a survivor. And like I mentioned before, I was like, I am not a survivor. You're not placing this label upon me. That is not enough. I am not going to be defined by the rest of my life based on what somebody else did to me when I was a child. I refuse to be labeled that. And that's how I felt about it. Now, I know some people take that, and they wear it like, I got through this. And that's great. Whatever works for you, do it. I'm just saying it didn't work for me. I said, I want so much more. I have huge ambitions. I want to go for them. And I felt that if I allowed this to continue the way it was, surviving to me was just getting by. So I didn't survive just in terms of that. I was surviving in terms of my finances, living paycheck to paycheck. That's survival. I was surviving in terms of I had a couple of friends, but I didn't have flourishing relationships. I didn't have deep relationships. I had like kind of top level relationships. And it was just like, I know there's so much more. There's so much more to life than this. So I continued. The one thing I can say To anyone who's listening, do not stop until you get what works for you. Just because it worked for somebody else does not mean it will work for you. You're a unique individual.
Yep, with a unique experience.
Yes, you have so much value within you. Do not let what anybody else says stop you, no matter how close they are to you, no matter how much prestige they have. Do what your gut is saying you need to do.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it just makes me think about my own journey. Our stories are very different, but very similar in ways. For people who are hearing me for the first time, I'm a domestic violence survivor, and almost losing my life being in an abusive relationship is really what turned my life around. And I was in survival mode even before that relationship, just shitty relationship after shitty relationship, shitty job, shitty friends, all of these things that was just manifesting in my life. And I had to get to the point that my life was almost taken from me in order for me to do the switch. It had to be a big thing for me in order to realize, Leanne, something needs to fucking change because this is not a way to live. So I appreciate you just sharing your perspective and how different it is, but it's still the same kind of message behind it that sometimes you just got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired in order for you to start changing some shit in your life.
Yeah, and it can be like sometimes we have to hit below rock bottom for it to be revealed to us, for us to discover and say, there's something valuable within me. I don't need to know what it is. I know that there's something there. And that's all that matters. And that is like that moment I was driving the car, something just clicked and said, stop, hit the brakes.
God knew it wasn't your time. That was God, okay? I don't know what anyone else believes in. I believe in God, a higher power, because I definitely had a come to Jesus moment too. I talk about it on my podcast if you guys want to check it out. My full in depth story, it's episode 12. We'll link it in the show notes. But yeah, man, it's just life throws things at us that we don't ask for. We didn't ask to be in abusive relationships. We didn't ask to be molested as a kid. It's unfortunate that sometimes we are dealt these shitty cards of life, but what are you going to be able to do with it? And that's why I just love your story and who you've become today, despite the things that you've gone through, to show and allow other people to know that this is just a small chapter of your story. It doesn't need to define your entire being, and you don't need to allow it to consume you and overtake your life and go to the drugs and the alcohol and wanting to kill yourself and all these things. Because it's very easy to go the opposite direction of what me and you did too, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And like I can say in my early 20s, like before we'll call it the discovery, I was like, you can do whatever you want to me. I don't care. You can do whatever you want to my body. You will never touch my soul. So I was just like, I didn't care. And there's things that happened that was just like, what in the world? And once I said, okay, that's it. I'm not a survivor. I've got so much more to give to this life. I've got so much more to do, and I'm going to figure it out. That figuring out, it took me 12 years. So I want anyone listening to know that even if you're like, oh my gosh, I've been at this for a year or 2 years, do not stop. Keep going because it will happen. It's your persistence to figure it out. It's your persistence because there's a belief in there that says you're valuable. There's a belief in there that says there's so much more for you. There's so much more that you get to do, that you get to experience. So it took me 12 years before I felt like, wow. And I was in situations where I would go, you know what the old me used to do in this situation? I would get IBS. I would get migraines. My body would do something to remove me from the situation because it was bad for me. I was around the wrong people. I was around the people who said that wasn't real. And my body would remove me. And now, like, and I knew it had shifted when I had situations like that. And I was like, wow, I didn't get a migraine. I didn't get IBS. I didn't keep my mouth shut. I voiced my opinion and I looked you straight in the eye. I was like, walked away from an experience like that and I said, oh, something worked.
That is the power of the healing journey. And I want people to focus on the word journey. Okay. It's not a destination. It's not like I'm going to reach this level and then I'm good because life is going to life. Shit is going to happen to us all the time. Different experiences, different people, different situations. But it's up to what you do on your healing to be able to navigate in some shitty situations that you're thrown in. And that's the power of the personal development journey, of healing, of doing the work that a lot of us run away from. And there's one area that I really want to focus on that you mentioned in the application, the power of forgiveness. So that's something that I talk about a lot. Again, being a domestic violence survivor, and I've interviewed many different survivors of many different forms of abuse and how the power of forgiveness plays a role in their healing. So there's one thing that you said on here that I really want to touch on, being grateful for what happened to you and forgiving the person who hurt you. Talk about that a little bit more, and what is some advice that you would share with a listener or viewer who is struggling? They're angry. This person fucking hurt me. How can I forgive them? How can I be thankful for what they did to me? Let's get into that.
I see them as two different parts of the healing process. For me, forgiveness came first. And I always found it that I could forgive others. The hardest was myself. So when I really understood forgiveness was a moment I was actually attending a real estate seminar. And those of us who want to hide, we sit all the way in the back. And I was in like the second to last row. And the gentleman on stage, who was wildly successful and had come from a very challenging life that he had overcome, he started talking about forgiveness. And he said, there's three people to forgive. The first is the person who offended you. And that's the one we all know about, where we're carrying that grievance. The second is what he referred to as the witnesses. So the people who may have wondered, did something happen to you, Heather? And they didn't ask for whatever reasons they had going on in their life. So find forgiveness for them. And the most difficult, when I sat in that room and he said the third person, tears just streamed down my face. He said, the third person you absolutely must forgive is yourself. And I was like, okay, so I need to forgive myself for not speaking up because I carried that guilt and shame. I need to forgive myself for allowing myself to stay stuck in survival mode. I need to forgive myself for all of those years that I carried the anger and lashed out at people who had no reason for me to lash out at because they were just being kind. So many things. So I went through the full forgiveness process. And when people hear it now, they're like, how could you forgive the person who molested you for 4 years? How could you forgive the intimidation? How could you forgive the physical violation? And here's what I say, it's not for that person. Forgiveness is for the person doing the forgiving. It's all for you. And you can forgive that person without ever telling them, like they were out of my life for a long time at this point. I did not go seek them out and say, I forgive you. To me, that's opening up a new wound. I went through my process of forgiveness and I chose to forgive. Why? Because I wanted it for myself. Like I mentioned, I did not want to be labeled a survivor. I did not want to be held back by this anymore. I do not believe in revenge. Revenge does not play a part in my life because all it does is keep you connected to that incident and it keeps you stuck in the past and you will never heal fully if you are constantly connected to it. So that's why when I wrote my book, the forgiveness part is called the release. Let it go. Break it apart into so many bits. Like you and I have talked, it's not about breaking the cycle, it's about obliterating the cycle. So it's in so many millions of tiny little bits of pieces, it can never be put back together again. We get to stand and be the person who obliterates the cycle. Because like a broken bone will heal, a shattered bone will not. That's how I see it.
Oh my God. I just got like full body chills.
And that's what came out of me. Did I speak like this when I started? No. When I started to explore the therapists and the group therapy and the books, and I just said, none of this feels good to me. None of this feels like I'm making anything that resembles progress, even a tiny little bit. Keep going. I didn't know what it was going to be. And when he stood there on that stage that day, and he said, "Forgive yourself," that was when all the tears just, I have no idea what went on the rest of the day because I just let it all flow. And that night, I set out on a mission to learn more about forgiveness, to understand forgiveness, to do exercises and processes to go through the forgiveness because I wanted to become a thriver that much. That's how deep that desire was within me. So I did the forgiveness.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that can just happen overnight. I remember one time I was working with one life coach, and she gave me an exercise to write a letter of forgiveness, not to my abusive ex partner, but to myself. And I remember when she first told me that, I was so offended. I was like, "Forgive me, like, what the fuck did I do? Like, this is a fucking waste of time," you know? But she was like, "No, Leanne, it's not about the other person. It's about forgiving yourself for feeling like this is what you deserved, forgiving yourself for loving someone who took advantage of you, forgiving yourself for being in this situation and feeling like you couldn't get out." So she told me to write the letter of forgiveness, read it out loud to yourself looking in the mirror. And I'm telling you, Heather, when I did that, the emotions that came up for me, I was not prepared for. The boo-hoo, ugly Kim Kardashian face crying, like looking a hot mess. But then, even beyond that, after reading that letter and burning it, I don't have the letter. She told me to get rid of it because it's a release, like you said.
It's you're burning it and letting it go. You're breaking the connection to it.
Exactly. She told me to tell me that I love me and say it over and over and over and over until you believe it, until you actually feel it. And girl, the emotions, like that's the self-love healing journey. That's doing the uncomfortable work that we run away from. That's sitting in our shit that we don't want to deal with, but that is where the true power of healing comes from you facing your inner demons or whatever people want to call it nowadays. But like it's so powerful, but it's something that it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be more setbacks, more triggers, more things that come up, but it's just so important to release it and don't hold on to it because we know what trauma can do to us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of that.
It can take it all away. And it doesn't even have to be a physical trauma. Like the level of trauma, it's not like, oh, your trauma is so much worse than my trauma. It's not a battle of traumas. It's not a battle of who is the bigger victim. Like, it's just there's something that happened, and you get to choose how you heal from it when you're ready to heal. Because here's the other thing, too. Some other people might be like, oh, you have to heal from it now. This is your time, blah, 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 blah. If you don't feel like it, it's not. It's on your timeline. It's your healing journey. Like Leanne said, it's a journey. And you get to take all these twists and turns. Because I can tell you when I was going through the forgiveness process, and then when I started speaking about, oh, I forgave the abuser and I forgave this person and I forgave that. And people are like, how could you? Why would you? He doesn't deserve that. No, he doesn't. What he did is unforgettable. It is not unforgivable because the forgiveness is for you. So just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life either. You get to redefine. They still happen to be a part of your life. You get to define what that relationship looks like. They don't get to come back and do the same thing. Because if they do, that's you need to continue. You continue and you continue to work. Like, why did I allow that? I forgive myself for allowing him to do it to me again. I forgive
And
it.
that's how you set those boundaries, right? That's how you're putting yourself first. You're loving on you. Yes, I can forgive you. I'm so glad that you brought that up, but I don't need to allow you back into my space. I can love you from a distance. I can forgive you from a distance, and you're no longer going to have access to me. And that's me loving on me. So thank you so much for sharing that part.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the way I view forgiveness is you have strength within you to be able to choose to become a forgiving person. So it become a practice. Like if I'm driving down the road and someone cuts me off and I want to curse them out, I'm like, well, you know what? I forgive you for cutting me off because maybe you're just in a bigger rush than I am. Be on your way. You don't carry the grudges. And because I don't carry those grudges and I don't feel like I'm being offended all the time because I let all that go, I no longer walk around angry. I come with open arms and like there's so much joy and love that I get to share with people. And that's the result of it. You show up differently, and the people who appreciate that will be connected to you.
I was just gonna say that you attract a different kind of person. That's how me and you were able to connect because we have and we still are doing our own healing, but we're able to have this growth mindset that a lot of us talk about in the personal development world to see things differently. And then when you're out and about and someone does cut you off, you'd be like, oh, you know what? They must be going through some shit, so I'm gonna have grace and space for them. But then I'm gonna be honest, on the other side, I can also be like, "Fuck you," like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm still a
It's
human
like,
being at
oh,
the end of the
that was
day. Yeah, yeah, exactly, but
it's like you ain't messing with me.
exactly. But it's all about the journey, and I'm just so grateful to sit down and talk with you and learn a little bit more about you and your story. I do want to ask because I ask everyone who comes on the podcast to share what does thriving mean to them. So let my listeners know what's your definition of thriving?
To me, thriving is just being you. Being you that you know that when nobody's watching, when you don't feel judged, you just get to be. So you say what you want. You choose joy. There's so much peace within now that those inner battles no longer go on. To me, there's like so much love and joy and peace that I just get to be. And to me, that is thriving because I don't carry around a worry that someone's going to attack me. I don't carry around a worry that, oh my God, if they're going to speak to me, what are they going to think of me? All that's gone out the window because thriving is through the healing journey, finding the peace within, finding love for yourself, and finding joy just in the little moments throughout the day and catching that, being like, ooh, the old me wouldn't have felt that, like, would not have smiled like that, or they wouldn't have said hello to a stranger. That's when you know you're thriving because you recognize the change in yourself.
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful definition. That's why I love asking every single guest towards the end of the conversation to leave the conversation on a positive note because I do talk a lot about heavy things. But just to know that Heather right here is a testament to anyone who's listening who right now you're in your survival season. It's okay. We've been there too. But there is hope. And I really hope that you're able to take away from our conversation that you can thrive despite the bullshit that life has thrown at you. So, Heather, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. Let my listeners know what are you working on, how we can work with you, how we can follow you, any special things coming up for you in 2024. Plug it all in for us.
So I had mentioned with you, I my book hit international bestseller last year. So that's Release, Renew, Revive. So it's on Amazon. Anyone wants it, you can go there and catch it. And I talk about forgiveness. I talk about gratitude. I talk about how to get your joy back for your life, how to tap into confidence when you feel like you don't have any. Let's get back to the person you were and the joy that you had for life before this event. And then if anyone wants copies of the access to the summit that I did that Leanne was on, the website's still up. It's survivortothriversummit.com. You can get copies of that, and just let me know. You want one, you want all of them, they're accessible because we want to share. There's so many people who've gone through this and they've taken it on in different ways. And Leanne and I have reached a point where we can speak publicly about it, and we get to do that because we've healed. And I think one of the greatest things that you do, Leanne, is that when you speak, it's like we don't feel like we're going through therapy with you. You've reached a point and you're like, okay, that happened and I processed it and my healing continues and I get stronger and I get more and more of me every single day. Because this isn't a therapy session. This is showing what's possible. And I want the listener to know the number one thing is that you have value within you. You have value just as you are. And if you want some guidance, you want some assistance, reach out to Leanne or myself because we are here to help you in that process.
Oh, Heather, I fucking adore you. We haven't met in person, but I'm manifesting that God is going to bring us together. I'm so honored to know you. I'm going to link all of her information in the show notes, her book, her website, where you can follow her and work with her on social media. I appreciate you so much. And may this be the first of many beautiful collaborations that me and you have together.
Absolutely. I'm so excited and I love the work you're doing. And I'm so thankful for you continuing to share your experience and to highlight women who have been through something similar because we all need examples. And there's times where we just need to hear it's possible. So thank you.
Thank you. You got two of us right here, okay? If we did it, you can do it too. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.